Welcome to episode 81 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on June 3rd, 2022. Welcome back for season 7, everyone. This is our split season together. I have a series of 5 interviews for you this summer. Then I'll be taking another hiatus to run the second session of Macking Our Way Through Shetland Tours. And then I'll be back to finish up the season through the end of the year. Before we get started, I want to thank those of you who came aboard as patrons while I was away. Heather, Janet, Glenda, Ashley, Rebecca, Peg, Anne, Amber, Jeanette, Amy, Honey and Wool, Katie, AJ, Michelle, Angie, Veronica, Marissa, and Nancy. Welcome to the I Thought I Knew How Patreon to all of you. Thank you for your support of the podcast. I noticed that a lot of you signed up and didn't provide your mailing address. That's totally fine and up to you. But know that around the end of the year, I do send a little something to all my patrons. So if you think you'll be supporting the podcast that long into the year, be sure to pop back in and add your address. And if you're supporting at a $5 or higher level, be sure to check out the Patreon feed from time to time to get the link for our 3 monthly online knitting sessions. I want to offer a quick thank you to everyone who purchased one of the Shetland Hogmanay boxes that went on sale last month. They are a 31-day Advent-style yarn box that will go from December 1st through the 31st to lead up to New Year's Eve, which is called Hogmanay in Scotland. I've seen the designs now from all of the designers, and I came back from the Macking Our Way Through Shetland Tours with many of the contents for the boxes, so I'm going to start assembling them this summer, actually. Patrons had first dibs at them, and once they went live to the wider world, they sold out in a matter of hours. Thank you again for your interest in those. I plan to do a daily vlog event with Jana of the Purl Together podcast again this December over on YouTube. So we will get to open our boxes together when the time comes. Speaking of Shetland, I did just get back from the first round of tours. It was a fantastic experience. Our first 2 tour groups were full of wonderful people who were excited to be there, and we had a wonderful time learning from local tutors and taking in the scenery and the hospitality of Shetland. It was such a benefit to have Jolene Garrick as my partner in crime on those tours because the insight of a local is indispensable when you are visiting a new place. We ate, we learned, we laughed. It was like the greatest summer camp for adults. We have another set of tours coming up in August and September. Those are all sold out, but we are preparing to run both the Fair Isle and Lace tours again in 2023. And we are also developing a 3rd themed tour. Listen through to the end of the episode for all the details I can share with you about those 2023 tours. I'd like to quickly thank Morehouse Farm and Knit New Haven for their ongoing support of the show. Knit New Haven will be part of the I-91 Shop Hop coming up again this year from August 8th through the 20th. Those of you who have been listening for the last year may remember my series I did with the I-91 shop owners. Knit New Haven is a perfect place to start or finish your hop. You pay $10 to receive your Shop Hop passport and a high-quality canvas bag, and then visit all 9 participating shops ranging from Putney, Vermont down to New Haven, Connecticut during the 13 days of the event. You get a stamp at each shop and submit your passport for the grand prize drawing. I know everyone loves New England in the fall, but I think summer is when it really shines. Everything is green, the skies are blue, the sounds of nature are lovely. This is a wonderful event to do as a long weekend or as an even longer week of rambling through Vermont, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Learn more about the event through the show notes. Starting or finishing at Knit New Haven allows you to celebrate by visiting Frank Pepe's Pizza, widely recognized as the best pizza in the United States. Enjoy your pizza, swing through Knit New Haven, and tell Linda I said hi. I'm going to be knitting a shawl for Rhinebeck this year, and Morehouse Farm wants to encourage you to do the same. Use one of the patterns at morehousefarm.com or knit your shawl using one of their yarns, or both, and then find me at Rhinebeck in October and show it off. You'll get a gift from Morehouse and a gift from me while supplies last. I've been stalking their site for a few weeks, and I think I've narrowed it down to 3 options. But I need to finish a few projects before I cast on, so I'm just going to back burner my final decision for now. Before Shetland, my husband and I made a trip to Iceland. We were there before the tourist season actually began. The season there is officially from June 1st through the end of August, and there are quite a few museums and experiences that are not open for the rest of the year. But fun fact, if you call them ahead of time, often they will come meet you there and let you in. That worked for a few places for us. There was one museum of sheep raising that I was hoping to get in, but they wouldn't open for us because they were actually remodeling before the season opened. Totally understandable. And I do plan to go back to Iceland again with a friend, so I don't mind not being able to see everything in one trip. In the meantime, it was very nice to be there when there was not tons of tourists. At the time, it was one of the few places in the world that you could go to without having to show proof of vaccination or take a test. So it probably did actually have more tourists there in April than it normally would at that time of year, but it still felt like we weren't stuck in a crush of people. We had lovely views of the different waterfalls and other natural sites without having to shoot around the social media influencers. It was a lovely trip. On the trip, I met two amazing women, Jóhanna from Haafell Goat Farm and Hulda from Uppspunni Mini Mill. They are both doing wonderful work in their spheres there in Iceland. Jóhanna brought the horned Icelandic goat back from the brink of extinction. And I'm going to bring you the interview with Jóhanna first because it sort of leads us into the interview with Hulda, as she's the one who processes the cashmere from Jóhanna's goats. I didn't even know that at the time I set these interviews up, but it was a fun connection. It was a brilliant opportunity to meet Jóhanna and spend some time with her on her farm. She is doing amazing work preserving this species of goat. She has an extensive line of products she's created to demonstrate the commercial viability of the species. We actually don't talk a whole lot about the cashmere she produces from her goats in this episode, but I thought our talk is extra interesting because she shares so much about what is involved in preserving a rare species from literal extinction, including dealing with the tiny genetic pool, the prejudices and misconceptions about goats in general, and the need to make them economically viable as a species so that others will join in the efforts to preserve them. Along the way, she shares a lot of information about the meat and milk produced by the goats and the history of their development. Now, I will say I had to do quite a bit of audio work on this interview. I suspect I need to replace one of my microphones that I use for remote interviews because my sound was dramatically lower than Jóhanna's. I mostly was able to get it equaled out, but if you notice weirdness with the sound from time to time, that's why, and you have my apologies. For now, though, please enjoy my interview with Jóhanna. Jóhanna, thank you for meeting with me so much.
My pleasure.
Can you share with my listeners the history of the Icelandic goats?
The goats, they were brought by the Vikings 1100 years ago. And like with our horses, there have not been imported any new goats for all this time. So they are now a special breed worldwide called the Icelandic Viking goats or settlement goats. And in the beginning, it have been a lot of goats because there's no animals that have as many names in the landscape as the goats.
Oh, okay.
On rivers, hills, lakes, whatever. But in the Middle Ages, we had a very cold climate in Europe. We talk about the Little Ice Age. And then before that, Iceland was covered with trees. But in that time, people cut down the trees for making coals, and the goats could not live in the woods anymore free. And people needed fat meat to eat, to burn for their own heat. And goat can never give us fat meat because they are most related to deers and gazelles, antelopes, these animals that collect the fat inside. And sheep became the savior of Iceland with their fat meat and all this good wool they had. And already then the goats became very few. So we know that 1890 there were just less than 100 animals left. And we know that 1930 we had around 3,000 goats because like in other countries it was the poor man's cow. And it was the milk giver on all the fisherman towns around the coast because you could not on that time go to a store to buy a milk. So after the war then we got rich. We got more things in our gardens than potatoes and rhubarb. And goats, I think if goats were humans, they would all be gardeners because they love to play in our gardens. So it was forbidden to keep livestock in towns, and because then people didn't have the fences as they have today. And farmers didn't need goats because they had cows that give much more milk. And after it was, when the tuberculosis were here, it was put in the law to pasteurize milk like in other countries.
Right.
And then goat milk didn't fit in. And I think people didn't realize that goat milk has 3 times more lactoferrin, who is a bacteria-killing stuff in milk.
Oh,
they have 3 times more than the cows. That's why it's so good for healing if you have wounds inside or leaking gut syndrome, some things like that.
Oh, interesting.
Then the goat milk is healing.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'd heard that before, that, if you have issues, the goat milk can be helpful, but I didn't know why. That's very interesting.
It's the goat milk is so much easier to digest. It's much smaller fat molecules and proteins. And that's why infants can use it the day after they are born.
Wow.
And it's very good for people with milk intolerance and lactose intolerance. So that's a very different type of milk.
Right.
But with the goats, that the farmers didn't need them. So in 1962-3, we had just 60-70 goats left. And there is a special gene that gives no horns and brown colors. And there was 1 goat left with those genes. And she saved what we have today. And you always have to breed together the goats without horns and with horns. Because if the males, and that is in all goat breeds, if the males are with just skin over their head, no horns, they are sterile from the nature. And their testicles is just red, and they have beautiful eyelashes, and they're very cute, but not worth anything.
Yeah.
So, but if they have just the little buttons out of their head, they are fine and give hornless girls. So in 1965, the government started to pay farmers a little bit for keeping goats, but never for more than 20 goats on a farm. So they paid you for keeping pets in a way. And when I started in this 1988, there was about 300 goats, just 40 owners, and I met 1 family who used meat and things from the goats.
Wow. And everyone else was just keeping them as pets?
Yeah, just pets.
So how did you get involved with the Icelandic goats?
Since I remember, I always felt goats were special. And my favorite book was, of course, Heidi. When I was in school, I was in a boarding school since I was just 7. And one of my roommates, she had very much bad allergy for cow milk. And her father bought goat to feed her when she was little. Okay. And it was always somewhere in my head that goat milk must be something special. And there was no one that had goats in my environment when I was little, and I saw them in the zoo, nowhere else. And if I asked my father for a goat, because I collected all the animals that I could find, and he said no. Goats are impossible animals. They are jumping over everything. They are destroying everything. They are badly minded, badly smelling, and not eatable. And this was the myth that old farmers even still have today, especially old sheep farmers. And I think it was a little bit this, it is the poor man's cow, it's something that about poverty if you are keeping a goat.
Right.
It's something like that. So it was just when my husband was in love enough, 33 years ago, that I got my first 3 goats. Of course, just as pets in the beginning. But of course, the group grew, and then in 1999 we found out that there was just 4 goats left with the genes of the hornless goats, and they had a time in slaughterhouse after 3 or 4 days. So we got one of the high vets to help us, so he could find a way for us to bring them here, because they came from other parts of Iceland. But that costed that we had to have the farm in isolation for 10 years. And I didn't think of that before, because a crazy woman sometimes does crazy things without thinking. And it meant because we were not allowed to sell any living animals away from the farm for 10 years.
Wow.
And we thought when we did this that we would get more help from the government, because our government have underwritten the Rio Compact about saving all genes. But somehow it didn't work. And so this was a bit of a struggle with 6 small kids and all this.
Did you have all 4 of the remaining goats?
Yeah, we got them all 4. We got three girls and 1 male.
So you had all of these remaining goats?
Yeah, and if we would not have been allowed to move them here, there would not be any hornless or brown goat in this breed in the world.
Wow.
So, yeah, now I can say for sure these are my goats. So I leave something when I go from here.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's and it was not quite all, because when the crisis came here, after these 10 years, the crisis came in Iceland.
The financial
crisis in 2008. And then everybody who had loan in banks, their loan raised a lot. And we got 10 extra million on our loans to pay for these idiots that were playing with our banks. And when you have 10 years in isolation with a farm, and well, it's not quite the best thing. So we could not pay the rents of this. And somehow didn't get the ears of the ministers. So a friend from New York, 2014, the bank was going to take the land. And that would have been a bit sad, because it had been in my family since 1780 something.
Wow.
And then a friend from New York, Jody Eddies, she had been here for a visit. She is writing articles about food normally, and was writing a book with an Icelandic chief.
Okay.
And she fell in love with the goats, and she started a crowdfunding.
Wonderful.
So this goats and this farm was saved by a crazy crowdfunding.
That's fantastic.
So I have a lot of people in the US that I have to say thank you to.
Yeah.
But also in Malaysia, South Korea, Nepal, it was everywhere.
Wow.
And it helped maybe because in 2013, 20 of our goats was burned by dragons in Game of Thrones. They came home, all of them in good health, but
that's good. Yeah, some people who are listening who watch Game of Thrones have actually seen some of your goats, because I think it was season 4. There's a scene with the dragon who comes up and eats some of them or sets them on fire.
He took Casanova in his claws.
No, poor Casanova. So what was that like, though? Did they just call and say, we need some goats?
If you need an animal in filming in Iceland, you have to contact one woman who is educated as animal trainer.
Okay.
And she knew me and my goats, and she wanted goats from this place because she knew they were very friendly and manageable. So they came here, the producers came here and took a look at the goats and had a talk.
Had a casting call come in? Here's your lines.
Oh, they were just very normal persons. But one of them, he had to run after the goats to see if they could run. That was a bit crazy.
To scare them, yeah.
And then they just asked me to choose some 20 goats that I thought was good to work with. So yeah, that was a bit of an adventure.
So they had to then be taken to the filming location.
We took them to a place where they were filming, and it was 18 hours of work for the goats.
Oh.
But and I think I would not put my animals in this every day.
Yeah.
Because it is a work for the animals. And we still have one of the guys living. He is 10 years this spring. And he was not so very good in cooperation. He didn't in co-working. He went his own ways, but he get all the credit, and he is filmed a lot every year. It became my mission to bring up this flock, and you are not saving a breed without making them work for their living. So we started to milk and to use the meat. And first, when I invited people for meat, they just looked at me. Do you eat it? Is it eatable? Don't it taste goaty? What is tasting goaty?
Right.
Of course, a goat tastes goaty,
Okay, yeah.
but that is not the strong taste that is often from goat seas, or the smell of the males when they are on a breeding season.
Right.
Meat from young goat is just delicious.
Yeah.
And it's the healthiest meat we can get because it's so easy to digest. it's low in fat, similar to chickens. It's high in protein, similar to beef, and the most iron we get from any meat.
Yeah.
So it's really healthy.
Yeah, I first had goat. Actually, I used to waitress at an Indian restaurant, and they had a goat special, and she one day let me have some, and I was like, oh my gosh, I too thought it would taste goaty, you know, and it doesn't. It does have a very strong flavor to it, but it's delicious.
In like the African countries and Asian countries, people often use the older animals. And my friends from Ghana, they love old bucks who is really smelling. But so that's something that an Icelander would never eat.
You have them younger. It's like mutton versus lamb, you know. You get
it's like I grew up with eating older sheep, and the only grounded meat we use is from older sheep because it's very gentle in the taste, and then we know where it comes from.
Right.
So it's similar. I like very much the meat of a castrated guys because I never sell meat from a buck after 6 months, except having them castrated, because then you can start to get this male smell taste, and if they are castrated, they can be next year really good meats.
Yeah, so it's just about management.
Yeah,
managing the animals.
It is.
Well, right. As you were saying, in order to save the breed, they have to work. You know, they have to have a purpose in order for people to raise large amounts of them. You mentioned already meat and milk. What else are you trying to promote with the goats?
My idea is that if you have to kill an animal, you use everything you can instead of throwing it away. And of course, when you have, like we have 200 babies a year, of course the half of them is normally boys. And I can't imagine a farm with 100 horny boys each year. So they go to slaughter. And also, of course, I sell also living animals to other farmers now.
Right.
But we use the skin. We have the skin tanned and sell the skin. I make insoles for shoes and some other things from the skin who is not really fine. We make sausage, pate from the older goats. We sell meats to 2 restaurants. And then I make milk, soap from the milk. I make cream from the tallow, because the tallow, the hard fat inside, it's very healing. And I had learned from people both from Serbia and from Brazil that they have traditions of using the tallow on hemorrhoids and for burning and wounds, because it's very healing and anti-inflammatory. So I make creams for wounds. I make one with pain-killing herbs, and my face cream is made of the goat tallow. And this I send a lot for my tourists to US and other places in the world. So that's very, very nice when people like the things you're making because you're just trying something new.
Wonderful, yeah. And you mentioned tourists too, so the farm is open for people to come and visit and see the goats.
The farm is open every day from 1 till 6 in June, July and August. And the rest of the year we always try to open if people call us, or we get mails that is asking for opening in next October even. And we get a lot of, especially people from US and of course from most other countries.
And that's another way they're working. They're here being examples, and people are learning about them.
And we started with opening the farm because Icelandic people was starting to come and see. May I show the kids the goats? May I come and pet your goats? Oh, may I see your goats? And when they started, I got a family at 12 o'clock on Sunday when I was giving my family its lunch. I thought, no, this is not possible. And I just asked them if they thought it was right to pay a little bit for it. And they were quite sure, of course, you take money for it.
Yeah, it's your time.
And that was 2009, 8 or 9, I guess. But then we just had the toilets in the house and like that. So it was a little bit, just opened the family house. But in 2012, we opened this here. It was the garage of my father and uncle for their cars and toys. And we got just a group of people that was interested in our work to help us with this. And since 2012 we have had this open, and this fast open time.
Yeah.
And
so this is a little, like a gift shop seating area that we're in, and you have all the different products around us.
Yeah, and in the start, we followed every family to the fields and told them the story about the Icelandic goats and what we were doing. And but now when we have so many, then we have big placards in the field so that people can read the story and see pictures. Because we cannot follow everyone.
Right. That's wonderful that there's so many people who come.
Yeah, we have really friends all over.
Self-guide. I think you said 8,000 last year. Visitors?
Between 7,000 and 8,000. So
that's just amazing. Yeah.
And this year we have got big groups from US that will come. One group will come here every 5-6 days a week for 5 months. So that will.
Fantastic.
That's just because, and it's so funny. It's just because one day in the last autumn, it was crazy weather on the peninsula, and it was closed, and it was closed up to the glacier. And then the guides, they called here if we could take people in.
Right.
And we were expecting 16 persons from US, but we got 80.
Oh wow!
That day. So it was
busy day.
It was a funny day, and one of these groups was so happy about this that they changed their plans in these tours. So it's it was really happy about that.
Yeah. So another thing that the goats produce, of course, is the cashmere, and you brought a hank over for me to touch. It's amazing. Cashmere. How long have you been producing the cashmere from your goats?
There are many years since I started to take it because I feel it's so amazing. But it's just the goats were not bringing cashmere when they were brought to Iceland. And the goats in Norway and Scandinavia, who we think they come from or are closest relatives, they don't have cashmere.
Okay.
So this is something they grew in the cold climate here. The fittest survive in this cold period. The fittest survive, and of course those who have the warmest wool. So this breeds up in this inbreeded flock.
Yeah.
It's have been the fittest that survive, and it is to be cashmere. The hole in the hair have to be 18 microns. In our sheep wool it's 28.
Right.
But in our cashmere, it's 15 to 16 microns.
Right. So that's finer than merino wool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much finer.
It's amazing. It feels divine.
Yeah. The first years, we had to send the wool to Norway to have it spinned.
Okay.
That was very expensive, but it was better than nothing.
Right.
But now this is the 4th year, I think, that we have a mill in Iceland that can take goat wool.
Okay.
So that's amazing.
That's great. So that must save a lot of time and funds to be able to do it that way.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, and you were saying that so the cashmere has to be brushed off the animals. It's not shorn.
No,
like a sheep.
We don't shear them because their overcoat, the long raw hair, that's the only thing they have to shelter from rain.
Right.
Because they don't have wool fat like the sheep. So there are few animals that don't have this long coat. And they are very quick inside when the autumn rain starts. Yeah. They are very cold. But in the winter, when the cashmere is on, they can stay out in 10 degrees frost without problems.
So how long does it take to brush the goats for their cashmere?
If you brush it really well, it's about an hour.
Okay.
It depends on how much they are giving or if I have been cleaning the wool before. But full cleaning is about an hour.
It's about an hour.
So it's... Well, I don't get paid a lot for my work.
It does sound like a very labor-intensive process because, you do have to clean the fiber. And is that done by hand? You're picking all of the little birds?
Not all. My friend who is the owner of the mill, she laughed at me last year and said, please don't become crazy of putting the hairs. Bring it to me.
So
but I take all the dirt and I take most of the raw hair because I don't like when we pay for the wool. If you put a lamb's wool there, you pay for what you get, the yarn you get. But with the goat wool, you pay for the kilos that I bring to her. So I pay also for what I didn't pick away.
Right, yeah. So
I try to take all the heavy junk away. Yeah,
that makes sense. So how many goats do you have on the farm?
We have 287 heads.
Okay.
But there is about 35 goats that will have babies this year.
Uh-huh.
We had up till 228 when it was the most, but then we were always trying, when you are breeding up so inbreeded flock, you try to pick everything. Yeah. I mean, the little ugly goats maybe have a good temper or something like that. So we were always collecting, and that was maybe the biggest job in this. But now we are more breeding up about good milking and good health. And when I got the hornless goats, we got they were so inbreeded that for a few years we had big problem with like scoliosis, feet that were turning wrong ways, and a lot of problems like that. They got paralyzed, and it was really horrible. Yeah. So that we can say that have been the main work, to breed out from inbreeding, to get new blood here and there. And normally I never use the males more than 2 years, so we can get some new. And there is in Maine, in US, there is one farm that is breeding up the Icelandic goat from semen. And that's the only place in the world the Icelandic goats are outside Iceland.
Oh, interesting.
Except it was in 1986, 6 goats was moved to Scotland because they were making a new Cashmere goats, the Scottish Cashmere goats. And they mixed, I think, 4 breeds of goats, and the Icelandic goats should bring the fineness in the hair. Okay. And there is one place you find a rest of these goats. They didn't get as popular as they thought it would, but else it's just in Maine that this amazing couple are buying semen and breeding up for the last 12 years.
Are there other farms in Iceland that have a good-sized flock?
There is...
or is it a herd? Is it a herd or a flock with goats?
It's a herd.
It's a herd. So are there any larger herds?
They are. Also? These are, what you say, these are herd animals. They work together. And there is the second biggest is in the highlands, and they are not, they are just spread over, and they are living a little bit like wild goats. Okay. But then I guess there are about maybe 5 places you have around 50 goats, 40, 50 goats. But still most of the owners have 2 to 10. Okay. Still most have it as pets. There are 2 other ladies started milking last year. But this is still the only goat farm that ever have been in Iceland, the only farm who's just working with goats. And I guess there's about maybe 7, 8 farms that are using the meat, and they're always coming more and more, because we are always trying to push people to use things and to have this cooperation about this. So, yeah, I think this will go on, because young people is very interested in goats. And, a lot of my friends blame me for introducing them for goats. So it's, and when you meet the goats, I mean, these animals are so amazing. They are so gentle and friendly if you work with them. But if you put them to the hills early in the spring and they come home around Christmas, they are the wildest animals you find. Yeah. And if the goat loves you, she is really your friend for the rest of her life. And it have been made a research in Queen Mary's University in London that goats are as clever as dogs, and that they can communicate if you listen to them. I was very happy, because then people cannot laugh at me when I say I talk to my goats.
It's scientifically proven.
It's proved. But they are behaving much more like cats. I mean, people kick a dog, the dog licks its finger. Don't try to kick a goat, and she will never forget. And they are more independent. And cats are their best friend, and they hate dogs normally. If they are not brought up with them, then they don't like new dogs. Yeah.
What is your hope for the future with these goats? What would you like to see happen?
Well, now this year my dream about my own creamery is coming through. I've been waiting 16 years for my own creamery. 16 years since I went to Norway to learn cheese making for first time. But but until now there is a little creamery an hour away from here, and they make the cheese, but I grew the herbs I use on it, and I pack it. And then I can do more things. He's mostly making feta and some gouda, but there are so many other things. I have often made skyr from the whole milk of the goat, and then it's also a fresh cheese and a dessert. So there are so many amazing things. And also the goat milk here is so sweet because it's very often with this bitter taste. But here they have had to adopt to eat just grass. We don't have trees for them, but they are leaf eaters. And if I feed them with corn like the cows gets, I get a little taste in the milk. So we just feed them with dried oats when we milk. So we have pure omega-3 milk. And I prefer to have less amounts of milk, but a healthy milk. Because I also like to give it to infants that don't have mother's milk, or to sick children, people with cancer. And then I want to have this pure milk. And it's so good tasting. And then we also make ice cream. And still, I think all people that taste it say it's the best ice cream they have ever tasted.
So I saw on your website that you have a goat adoption program. How does that work for you and for the people who adopt the goats?
It started when we were losing the farm. Then this was a way that we started because lots of people like to help in some way. And it was not expensive. Today it costs 10,000 over a year, Icelandic kronas. And if a family is visiting 2 grown-ups and 2 children, it's 4,500. So in 2 visits you are getting it back because people who foster a goat have free visits. And then you choose the goat and you pay this 10,000 kronas. And if people is interested, then we try to send them photos, send them pictures when they get babies. And these people is often becoming our best friends because some of them are often coming for a visit. Other people was just doing it for helping about this matter. But it was 180 persons that was fostering in those years. And I always said this was our army because this was the people that was talking about us, that was bringing their friends. And so it was working very well. And still today, people like to do it. They give it to kids for Christmas or birthdays or grown-up people that have everything. Then instead of buying a goat in Africa, they buy a goat in Iceland.
That's wonderful.
And
some people are really hard to buy for.
And just make this nice relationship to people, and the people who is happy to come and visit their goats, they talk about this and they spread the interest in goats. So and we have also foster parents in the US and Europe. So, but not so many now, but we have. And so it's and they of course get a paper about that they are fostering this goat, and
it's official.
And you choose. You can do it just for 1 year, but some people is doing it all the life of the goat. It depends.
So if people are curious and want to see some of the products that you're producing, is there a way for them to see that online? Do you have ordering online?
We are opening a new, our old website collapsed, but we are now opening a new website. And there we will bring all these things in there. On Facebook, we also have Haafell a Goat Center. You can find us on Facebook with Haafell Goat Center. And we are on Instagram too, but I'm not very working there. I think it's just Haafell. And people can always people find there the way to contact us. And in the future we plan to have ordering pages on the website. But now people is just calling or sending mail, and ordering I send all over the world.
Wonderful.
Even before last Christmas, I sent 2 parcels of jellies and syrups to US with big parcels because I play in my garden and I make jellies and syrups from the things you normally don't eat, like dandelions, roses, pansies, columbines, lilacs.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope some people will contact you about the cashmere because that's amazing. But yeah, there is quite a lot in the shop area. There's the hides, and you have some embroidered towels and different. Are those salts?
These are bath salts and scrubs.
Bath salts and scrubs.
Yeah, there's no goat in that.
No goat. It's
just
cool.
magnesium salt and the herbs I pick around.
Right, as well as the jellies and the soaps that you make as well. The
soaps are very good for your skin. We import the glycerin base who have no sodium loaded, no strong stuff in it.
Okay.
And in that I put a lot of goat milk, some tallow, olive oil and honey, and different herbs or essential oil. And this is the only thing I clean my face, my hair, everything. And people with eczema use them a lot to keep down eczema. Because goat milk is known for centuries for being good for your skin. And the creams that I make from the tallow is also helping a lot with difficult skin problems.
Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Jóhanna for having us by and spending time with us. If you find yourself in Iceland, Haafell is open to the public through the tourist season. And at other times, if you contact them ahead of time, they will likely be able to have you around too. I came home with several hanks of the cashmere from the Haafell goats, and it is so dreamy. It's spun to a fingering weight, and it's just ever so slightly off-white. I think it's going to end up as a lace scarf, but for now, it's just living on a shelf that I can sort of allows me to pat it as I walk by, and I'm just enjoying it in the hank right now. If you would like to contact Jóhanna, you can reach out through social media or their website. I'll put all the links in the show notes for you. A few more things before I go. Okay, I promised you the details that I can share about the tours for 2023. And so I do have them for you now. If you're interested, please grab some scrap paper or open up your calendar because there's going to be a few dates that you're going to want to mark down. We will be letting you know about the specific details for the 2023 tour offerings on July 15th. That'll include the prices, the specific dates, and the itineraries for the tours. You will have a few days to look over the information and decide if and when you'd like to join us on one of the trips. If you are interested in joining us, we will be releasing the booking link in stages. July 18th, which is a Monday, members of the I Thought I Knew How Patreon will be given the link to register at noon Eastern Time. That's 9 a.m. in California, 5 p.m. in Britain, and I'm going to let you do the conversions from there if you're not in one of those time zones. The following day, on July 19th, also at noon Eastern, all of these are going to happen at noon Eastern, those who are on the waiting list and who have told us that they plan to travel with a friend or partner will be given the booking link. This will allow those people to book the double occupancy rooms. In order for your reservation for one of those rooms to be held, both people who will share the room on the trip will need to book on that day and tell us who they want their roommate to be. So if you're traveling with your college roommate or your sister or a knitting buddy, you either both need to register on that day or arrange for one of you to book for both of you at the same time. That's if you want to be sure you book that day. I mean, if one of you books on the Friday or if one of you books on the Tuesday and the other one can't book until the Thursday, as long as there's still space in a double occupancy room, we can make that work. But if you want to make sure that you get one of the double occupancy rooms, you need to do it on that Tuesday. July 20th, also at noon Eastern, the booking link will go out to those who are on the waiting list who plan to be solo travelers or who have not told us that they plan to be traveling with a friend. So make sure if you're on the waiting list and you're planning to travel with another person and you're willing to share a room with that person, make sure Jolene knows that. And then on July 21st, that's when the link will become live for the wider world and any remaining spots will be up for grabs. To hold your place on the tour, you will be required to pay a £100 deposit for each tour you book. That deposit is completely non-refundable. It covers the administrative costs and time of getting the ball rolling for your participation in the tour. If you have to back out of the tour, you will forfeit the deposit. The remainder of the cost of the tour will be due 90 days before your tour starts. The tours will again run in 2 blocks, one in the spring and one in the late summer. The dates for the 4 tours in spring will be April 16th through May 14th. The late summer tours will run August 20th through September 17th. Each week of the tours will start on a Sunday evening and end on the following Sunday morning. You are responsible for arranging your travel to and from Shetland. The tour begins and ends at the airport in Shetland, where we will pick you up when you arrive and drop you off in time for your departing flight. At this point, I'm not going to give you the order of the tours, but they will be ordered so that you can combine them if you wish, with very little overlap of activities or experiences between them. So for instance, you may come just for Lace Week, or you may combine Lace and Fair Isle weeks back to back, or stay for Lace, Fair Isle, and the new tour. You will have some overlap in restaurants, but there will be no overlap in the lessons you take on the tours, and only a few experiences from one week to the next are the same. So to recap, if you'd like to get the very first dibs at a spot in one or more of the tours in 2023, join the Patreon for the podcast at patreon.com/IthoughtIknewHow. Otherwise, I strongly recommend that you get on the wait list by contacting Jolene at info@islandvista.co.uk. And if it applies, make sure she knows that you plan to travel with someone else and are willing to share a room, and make sure she has the mailing address for that person too. If you like to live dangerously and would prefer to just wait and get the links when they go live to the wider world, make sure you're following I Thought I Knew How on social media, or go to ithoughtIknewhow.com to get on my mailing list, and I'll do a mailing on the 21st to let folks know the links are live. I'll have the links to get to all of those places in the show notes, like I do. Whew! For many of us listening right now, it is summer. Get outside and enjoy it while it lasts. I'll be back in a few weeks with another interview from Iceland. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IthoughtIknewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website ithoughtIknewHow.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you're on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, Knit New Haven, and Morehouse Farm for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.